Hello, citizens of Neverwinter. Today we're going to be talking about two separate Mod 16 wizard builds. I'm going to start in with Thaumaturge build, and then later on I'll be talking a little bit about an Arcanist build. Uh, for my build, I generally stay with one set of gear for both, though there are some gear changes you could make to make the Arcanist just a little better. So first off, looking at the hat, I'm running the Protege's Charmed Hat right now. I mean, that's giving me 5% extra damage in Undermountain. It's basically just a slight upgrade right to the Spy Guild hat. Also running the Hag's Rags. So you're going to see a common theme, much like my other DPS classes. In Mod 16, the testing is bearing out that a lot of this percentage damage increase gear, even though it's got a lot lower item level, a lot less stat points, is cranking out more damage overall. Um, and then I'm running the Terror Grips on my wrists. However, with the Arcanist build, you're actually going to be better off running, say, like the Primal arm piece for more action point gain. Running, just an Alabaster main hand and offhand. If you're in a group that's got a good healer, the Burnish set's probably a little bit better. Or you could go after the Unicorn, that is the Watcher set. I would argue that for solo play, the Alabaster set's far superior to the Watcher set. Watcher set's really kind of a one-purpose set, and again, it's kind of a unicorn to go after as of the current status in the game. I'm not going to get too much into some of the other gear here. Just again, kind of point out that pretty much everything's about a stat boost. I've tested, from a neck and belt set though. I am running, the Demon Lord set. Uh, I've done a lot of testing on this, and it's a pretty clear winner, especially in group content with heavy enemies. When you're running solo, some of the new artifact neck and belts, they might be pretty good. In fact, they are pretty good. You can look at, uh, running the music box set, right? The Apprentice's Spoils. That one's pretty decent, but it just doesn't compete with Demogorgon, unfortunately. Uh, so again, all about percentage-based damage increases. From an artifacts perspective, so looking at the Thaumaturge build, this is more of my AoE build. I run the Envenom Storyteller's Journal like fully decked out. It does great AoE damage. It's got a little bit of AP gain on it. It's a pretty good artifact. It's actually a pretty good artifact even if you're running single target. And then I have some of the other new 300 artifacts, again, for bigger stat points, and the Shard of Orcus Wand to obviously complete the Demogorgon set. I would, if I have one complaint about this mod is that the devs actually didn't nerf the Demogorgon set a little bit more uh, to make it a little less viable, right? We look at our ability scores. Everything is rolled into int and charisma. The reason for that is intelligence gives you a little bit of magic damage boost. Uh, really don't care a lot about the control bonus. Control really isn't as big of a deal. Mod 16 going on as it used to be. It can help a little bit in some weaker parties, um, but it's more about the magic damage boost. One note about the ability scores is they don't make a whole lot of difference. You need 3 points uh, per 1% gain. Uh, and then I rolled in the Cha. A big part of the reason I rolled in the Cha is companion influence and recharge speed. Recharge speed, it makes a big difference on the wizard. From a stats perspective, I'm pretty close to where I want to be on this particular character. Running quite a bit of power, so this is without potions, flat-footed. I'm way over cap on armor pen, way over cap on defense, way over cap on crit. I mean, you can kind of see a common theme, except for some defensive stats here. I'm over cap on everything. And then combat advantage, I could use another 10k to hit cap, but I'm kind of the belief right now that having the power gain is a little bit more important than an extra combat advantage. We look at mounts. These are the current mount insignia bonuses I'm running. I could make some changes here, like say run double gladiator's guile, for example. for a little bit more movement speed. But from a majority perspective, stacking power and companion influence in here as much as possible. And if I'm short on some other stats, you fill in with those stats here and there. If you look at here, I've been running a mastery because I was a little low on accuracy when I first did these. Looking at companions, running an augment companion. Um, in this particular character, I did go through, collect all of the magic relics from the leveling expeditions at Undermountain. That's something I'd like to call out specifically for players that have not done the Undermountain campaign yet, or console players, right? When it's time to do the little mini expeditions while you're leveling, my advice is to do those solo and make sure you get all of the uh, the magic relics. When you turn in, you're going to get relatively decent stuff. Two of the expeditions will give you purple companion gear, which have a ton of stats and double offensive slots. From the other stuff, I'm running a lot of power. So you can see pretty much everything I'm running gives power except for, this one piece where I'm getting, 8,000 combat advantage. I've looked at possibly changing out, throwing in the Velociraptor here for a little bit more power yet. But I kind of like having an extra 8,000 combat advantage. Again, use this section here to fill in your stats as you need them so that you can meet your caps and boost your damage. Looking at boons, so campaign boons, I went straight up on power, straight up on hit points. I pretty much automatically just do that because it's really easy to just go, 555, 555, and then right up the tree, right, as I'm applying. And then I apply the Marathon Runner boon. It's really nice having that extra movement speed, especially in dungeons. There are some tanks out there that are wicked fast, and there are barbarians out there that run DPS. They're going to run in front of the group all the time, and this helps you keep up and stay relevant in parties. And then in this particular case, I am running increased companion influence, 2% per rank. I found that I'm not as in close and personal with, like I am with a lot of my melee classes. The So the control resistance isn't quite as important for this class because I can stay out of those control zones, right? And then looking at tier 5, running increased action point gain and increased recovery, just a little bit more. Keep my dailies flowing a little faster. Keep my encounters refreshed. And then from a master boon perspective, Deathly Rage. Doing a lot of testing on Deathly Rage. For most of the classes that are DPS oriented, this really is the best master boon. That being said, I don't find the master boons all that impressive, but a little bit extra is a little bit extra. When we look at the guild boons, I'm running power and I'm running hit points on this one. The reason I'm running hit points is I'm way over defense, right? If I was under cap on defense, I'd probably throw defense in here instead. And then when you're running scaled content where you're being scaled down, you probably want to run the armor pen boon just to make sure you're a little closer to meeting that cap. If you're way, way, way over armor pen at level 80 and you get scaled down, you may be at cap already. So keep in mind that generally speaking, when you're being scaled down to level 70, when you're being scaled down to level 70, the caps are generally about 57k. So you need about 57k armor pen at level 70. If you're running later the Mad Mage, you're going to need about 68,000 armor pen. From a utility perspective, I run Revive Sickness in almost all the dungeons. Now, the reason for that is scrolls no longer, remove the Death's Head. So what this does is reduces the penalty. That penalty when you have Revive Sickness is super severe. It can, you get a couple of full, party drops and someone scrolls everybody up. That first stack, if you're not running that Revive Sickness boon here, that's 10% decrease defense, hit points, and damage, I believe. So if I'm a little wrong on that, go ahead and correct me. Going off the top of my head. So from a powers perspective, this is the Thaumaturge AoE loadout. So from an at-will perspective, running Ray of Frost. It's my go-to at will. And then I'm running Scorching Burst as kind of my secondary at will. Uh, how to use Scorching Burst is you can either hold it down, and catch a wide AoE area. I generally don't use it that way. The better way to usually do that is kind of like this, just kind of tap, 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 real quick hits, right? Um, and you'll find that that actually does quite a bit of really quick damage and procs a lot of smolders, right? And then from an encounter perspective, for my AoE rotation, I run Icy Terrain. So that's all about, just throwing down, you know, a DOT. It kind of acts like a DOT, but it's not really. It's doing direct damage ticks. And then uh, I have Conduit of Ice. I run Fireball on tab. So generally I'll lead in with Fireball, then pop down Icy Terrain, throw on a Conduit of Ice on the biggest enemy there, hit him with Chill Strike, and then usually when I'm running solo, there's maybe one guy left. More than likely they're all dead. If there's one person left, I just Ray of Frost them the rest of the way down. We're looking at class features. I run critical conflagration. So what's really cool about this class feature is, yeah, you're gaining 10% crit severity, but whenever you critically strike with one of your powers, you add smolder to your target. You notice that the only counter power that I have that applies smolder is fireball. I technically don't even need fireball. I can just go in there and with 50% crit chance, I'm adding smolder all the time. I don't need to worry about applying smolder or reapplying smolder. My crits are doing it for me. And then I'm running Chilling Presence. So I'm adding a lot of chill stacks to targets as well, so it's increasing my damage there. So when I look at a class feats, what I'm running is I'm running Relative Haste. So again, speeds up the cooldown rate of my powers by 1% for each stack of chill. I'm constantly running full chill stacks, or they're dead, right? Up to a maximum 10%. So again, that's more fluid and counter powers running through. For column 2, I'm running Glowing Flames. So, Smolder's Flames now radiate. So every time you apply Smolder to target, 20% of that damage is now going out to all the enemies within 50 feet of that primary target. It's a nice little AoE. So, again, I could throw, Ray of Frost on a target here, and you can see that it's splashing damage down onto secondary targets in an AoE. For the third column, running Frigid Winds. So again, all about increasing my damage. I do 1% more damage per stack of chill on my target. For the fourth column, I went for a critical burn. That's where your crit severity is increased by 10%, and Smolder now deals 25% more critical damage. So now I'm boosting Smolder. A big chunk of the damage for this build is really off of your Smolder and Rimfire stacks. It accounts for a big chunk of the damage of this. It's less direct damage and more of those proccing dots, right? And then I'm running Directed Flames. So Smolder now deals only 75% of its initial total damage, but it applies it instantly. So I'm constantly applying Smolder procs, so I'm constantly doing that damage, right? So if I switch over and I look at an Arcanist build, so before I get too deep in the Arcanist, I'm running a lot of the same gear, same boons, same companions, same mounts for this. Part of that reason is just an investment, right? If I really wanted to tweak this out to be best, I'd probably change some of the gear and change around some of the stat points. Make sure that I got plenty of action point gain. That being said, uh, this particular Paragon path has the potential of doing the absolute most damage of any class in the game. If it's played perfectly, you're not getting controlled, and you've got a solid party behind you. The burst potential on this is insane, but it requires smooth rotations, it requires perfect gameplay, and a solid tank, holding aggro. So for this, my go-to at will is still Ray of Frost, and then Storm Pillar. Storm Pillar gets mixed in the rotation because remember, one of the added effects on Storm Pillars, if you charge it up to greater than a 50% charge, it refreshes your Arcane Mastery and Chill stacks. So this build is all about getting your Arcane Mastery stacks up and your Chill stacks up and keeping them up, right? This again, so against bosses like in Lair or the Mad Mage, this can do absolutely insane damage. From an encounter power perspective, I run Rave Enfeeblement on tab. So again, this is about increasing my damage. It also hits pretty decent. It's only a 350 hit magnitude hit, but it increases the target's damage taken from magical and projectile attacks by 10% for 10 seconds. So it's 10% damage increase for basically all of your attacks. And if you're running with another class, that is a party-wide effect. And then I run Repel, also a big hitter. So that's a 475 as a push. This one, depending where you're running it, can cause a little bit of angst in a party. So kind of be careful where you're using this, and make sure your party is aware of the Repel. Entangling Force, also another decent hitter. And you notice the common theme: every one of these encounters is an arcane attack or an arcane type attack, right? And then obviously Disintegrate. Disintegrate has kind of a range of damage, and it kind of hits good. We're talking about dailies. The go-to daily, and pretty much the only daily you'll ever use on this build, is going to be Arcane Empowerment. This daily is absolutely insane. So it doesn't do any of its own damage, but it boosts your encounters by 10% more, and then your encounters recharge faster. For that 10 seconds, your powers are basically on 0 cooldown. The only cooldown you have is your cast time on those encounters. You can cycle through, probably 10 to maybe 20 encounters in that 10 seconds. Absolutely bursty. If you're running solo with this build, maybe you'll use Ice Knife. The nice thing about Ice Knife, the downside, to Arcane Empowerment, is you get interrupted in the middle of that, you basically lost all that time, right? You just use the daily for a lot of nothing. Ice Knife is pretty much, it's hard to interrupt. It does big damage, kind of does an knock down, add some chill stacks. Use it sparingly. Think about where you're going to use it, but your go-to daily should be Arcane Empowerment. So we're talking class features. So Storm Spell, pretty much mandatory. So you do a crit, and you target takes 100 magnitude 30% of the time on a crit, right? Just a little extra damage. We look at the other one I'm running is Arcane Presence. I've kind of played around with this one a little bit. This is what I've settled on for now. I may change my mind later. Really, what this is doing is it's when I'm in a boss, I'm generally sitting on 10 stacks of Arcane Mastery, and I'm just increasing, my at will, my Ray of Frost at will. Kind of becomes my go-to at will when I'm waiting for things to cool off, and so it's just doing more damage there. Okay, so for feats, so first off, spell twisting. I think it's way better than the other. I kind of want to talk a little bit about column 2 here, Assailing Force. I am absolutely positive as of right now that Assailing Force is not working, and I am stubbornly refusing to change it for Snap Freeze. Snap Freeze is pretty decent, but if Assailing Force, if it was working, would be incredible. I'm really hoping that the devs can get around to actually fixing Assailing Force so that it's working, because if it was, it would, be of a great benefit. And then running Chaos Magic for column 3. This one's absolutely awesome. Again, you've got a 10% chance, when you use an encounter or daily power to either have a power surge, rapid recovery, or gain 20% of your AP over 5 seconds. It's really chaotic. If you run ACT on a target for, let's say, 2 minutes and do multiple rotations, because of the chaos of this, your damage can fluctuate 20-30% one way or the other. We look at column 4, running striking advantage. So when I'm dealing combat advantage damage, it grants you a 20% chance of doing 80 magnitude lightning attack damage to your target. If you're running you're running in a party, totally the way to go. If you're running solo, you're going to want to go the other way with Nightmare Wizardry, where your crit strikes have a chance to grant you combat advantage. If you're running with a good party, you should have combat advantage all the time because people should be positioning themselves to grant positional combat advantage. And then the last feat here is probably the most impactful feat of the bunch. This one allows your Arcane Mastery stacks, instead of stacking only to 5, up to 10 times, and grants you an additional 1% damage per stack and lasts for 10 seconds. This is a crazy awesome feat, and it's kind of part of the secret sauce of what makes the Arcanist loadout so potentially effective single target endgame. That's all I have for today. If you enjoyed any of this information or want to learn a little bit more, please follow me on Twitch. The link is either on the video here or in chat. It would be Lord_Willow_ at Twitch. Thank you.